Hi everyone, welcome to the inaugural Garland Gab podcast here on YouTube. We're delighted here today to be talking about Judy of Carnegie Hall, the 60th anniversary of what has been called the greatest night in show business history. I hope today, I suppose, with the help of my esteemed colleagues, where we will chat, dissect, discuss everything Judy at Carnegie Hall, some of the background to it, the concert itself, and I guess the enduring legacy of the concert. So I'll introduce our panel for this evening. We've got Sarah Westhead, and Sarah has been a fan of Judy since the tender age of 3. One Christmas Eve, she entered the land of Oz and found herself on a magical journey that has lasted a lifetime. Sarah has almost completed her degree in creative writing and film studies. She has excelled in film theory, criticism, and film writing whilst there. And these are areas alongside producing, researching, and fiction writing that she would like to pursue. Next year, Sarah will complete a master's degree in journalism to further her skills and experience. Alongside all of this study and writing, Sarah works supporting vulnerable adults in their homes and day-to-day lives. Sarah has continued this work as a frontline key worker during the recent global pandemic. Everybody, it's Sarah Westhead.
My intro is nowhere near as good.
Yours is perfect. You may know Miss Carly Jade as the owner of the semi-successful, her words not mine, Instagram and Tumblr fan account, Oh My Garlands. She has written a string of popular fan fiction and had a piece published in the Bomb Bugle. She loves to bring Judy back to life by colorizing and restoring photographs, as you can see on her Instagram, plug, and actively engages with other Garland enthusiasts on nearly all social media platforms. Please welcome from Canada, Miss Carly Jade.
Thank you.
welcome. And there's myself, Conor Grant. I am living in Ireland. In 1940, Judy Garland introduced the song It's a Great Day for the Irish, and well, here we are. I'll keep my one a lot shorter this time. Here we are, Judy at Carnegie Hall. I think I kind of thought it was important maybe to start off with the background to Judy at Carnegie Hall, because it wasn't just, I suppose, when people talk about Judy's career and her life, obviously the Carnegie Hall concert comes up and it's an incredible career highlight. But I don't know if everybody is very much aware that it was one stop on a massive tour that she had undertaken, kind of beginning in 1960 and off into 1961 as well. So really, Judy had spent the second half of the 1950s after Star is Born kind of on the concert circuit. She had worked she'd returned to the Palace in 1956 for another extended successful engagement on Broadway. She had taken her show to Las Vegas, to major concert halls around the US. And towards the end of the 50s, she had begun a opera house tour, Judy at the Met, which was a massive big production. I think it's the only engagement she did the Born in a Trunk routine live on stage. But towards the middle of 1959, she was ultimately diagnosed with a very serious illness. She was diagnosed with an inflamed liver or hepatitis. And when she was admitted to hospital, doctors really were not too confident of the outcome. I think at one stage she was told she was going to be a semi-invalid for the rest of her life, and she laid back and said, "Wee." After the years of work that had built up to that, you know. So I guess that's where we're kicking off our little discussion today, is kind of just some of the initial background to the tour. So I don't know, I'll throw it out, whoever wants to chime in.
Well, I think I love what you said about she laid back on her bed and was just like, whoopee, finally, right? She's getting that, she's not forced to work. And I feel like, especially in the 50s, that's when she really felt that the most, right? That it was always about the money. There always needed to be money being brought in and to pay off the debts and so on and so forth. And now here she was getting a diagnosis that strictly prohibits her from working. But of course, in true Garland fashion, she spent the rest of her life defying that diagnosis, right? She proved him wrong. I'll say that.
Definitely, 100%. Nobody knew at that point in 1959 what was going to lay ahead for the early part of the 60s, where she had this phoenix moment coming out, with it. I love the song "Rise Like a Phoenix" from the Eurovision. I don't know. Do you know the Eurovision, Carly, or do you know? No,
I
don't. There's a thing called the Eurovision Song Contest that's done throughout Europe. Now, strangely, Australia, the last couple of years, have been a guest of it, even though they're not in Europe. But anyway, it's been going on since the 50s. But one of the songs a couple of years ago was a song called "Rise Like a Phoenix." And it wasn't written about Judy, but it just reminds me of her.
It definitely could have been written about Judy.
Yeah.
I always think of that year, or that diagnosis rather, as kind of her rebirth. She, when you take a listen, there's a very there's a good difference between how she sounded in her 1961 tour versus late 50s. She was reborn.
Yeah, 100%. And I know the recording of Coconut Grove show from 1958, we know that was, for some inspired, wonderful reason, recorded on the closing night of her 3 or 4 week engagement. So it unfortunately captures her voice towards the end of the show, of the run, where it's a little bit tired. But the difference between that and then listening to some of these 1960 and 1961 recordings is incredible. So by late 1959 and into very early 1960, of course, she had her rise from the Phoenix moment, and she did rally and start getting well on the back of this diagnosis, and moved to London in summer of 1960, and began, well, I should say really that before she even did this, her first return to work was faraway part of town for the movie Pepe. Which I think was done in California or somewhere in the States anyway. But so she did that, and then off to London in summer 1960. And I know she recorded the That's Entertainment album as well, which I think may have been recorded in California as well. But her first big piece of work in London in 1960 is what we know as the London Session recordings. And this is kind of I would say it's kind of the foundation for what became the Carnegie Hall concert.
Yeah, I just want to flip back a little bit, talking about the late 50s.
Yeah.
I struggle a little bit sometimes to see Judy at that point. I know she was so unwell, she was bloated. It was, despite what people used to say about her weight, it was the only time she really was seriously overweight. And she, obviously, Sid Luftan helped with the finances. She was completely overworked. Her body was full of toxins. But I love the story that when she moved to London, I love the stories of London in 1960. I love them in all the books. She was so relaxed. She was so happy. I love seeing her with Dick Bogart. And he called her, what was it he called her during that period? The only classy lady or something around, or something. I'm paraphrasing, something like that. But I love the story that she was taking a shower, and I know, Carly, you mentioned this the other day, and she noticed the difference in her voice during that shower. Now, anyone else, if they just recover from a life-threatening illness, told them they never work again, they probably would start to lose the voice. But in true Judy style, has expanded to even greater power and depth of emotion, and it was just that much, it was so much more full, and she seemed to have more control of it than she had in the 50s. She kind of had the control in the early 60s. She had the power of the 50s, the control of her MGM. days, in my opinion. And I just love that early period of the early 60s, which is, you know, on the back of that really difficult late 50s period.
Oh, me too. I think that period was one of the best for her that she's had in a very, very long time. And I think that, I mean, obviously because she was told that she couldn't work, she took that time for herself and really, you know, she was finally able to be a regular woman, like if that makes any sense. She was, you know, she was going out for long walks. She was able to focus on just being a parent. She was able to do things that she wanted to do without having the pressure of, you need to go back to work, you need to go back to work, because, well, she couldn't go back to work. And I just wanted to share, Sarah, I read through the London portion of Lorna's book yesterday, and I love the way that she writes about that time period, because again, now you get to see that she was just being mama. She was finally getting to do the one job that she loved to do. And Lorna used to get really bad styes during that time frame. And what Judy would do is she'd have to put the medication on her eye and then do a patch and everything. And Judy used to decorate those patches with sequins and glitter and all kinds of other things. And then, you know, send her off to school. And the teacher actually ended up having to call Judy and tell her to stop doing it because all of the other kids were getting jealous. And I just love that. Like, that is the Judy we all know and love, right? And of course, you know, you mentioned it already with her being in the shower and realizing the voice that she's got, right? She's just belting it out, and she realizes, hey, I sound pretty good. And oh, what to have been a fly on the wall to listen to her just belting it out in the shower when nobody's watching, right? I'm sure that would have been quite something to hear. And that was it. That was when she realized, you know what, I want to work. She was focusing now. She was shifting her mind frame to, I want to go back to work. And she was doing it on her terms this time. And yeah, I believe, she said to Sid while she was in the shower, hey, I want to go back to work, do something for me. And Sid ran with it, and he booked her in, that was oh my goodness, I'm having my brain fog again. Paris.
The Palladium in London. I think it was the Palladium the first, because
yes, thank you.
Dick Bogart who encouraged her to lose the vaudeville trappings.
Yeah.
The woman orchestra voice, that's it, and that's all she needed. But going back to what you just said, even though when she found out she would never work again, she laid back and just said, whoopee. You know that despite that she was worked to death, I don't think she ever could have given up work completely, Judy. Even if she'd have had money and wouldn't have had to work, I think she would have still gone out when she was well and able to, and performed.
I think so too. I mean, the stage was where she felt most at home, right? I mean, she loved the audience reaction. She loved their love. And you know, she just wanted to work on her own terms. She didn't want someone telling her that she needed to work. She didn't want to hear about the money problem. She didn't want to, you know, she wanted none of that, because that was just stressing her out even more. And, you know, with this, you know, this rest and vacation, she was finally able to do it on her own terms. And that's, I mean, and you can tell that she is so much happier doing that in the London sessions, in the Paris concert, in Carnegie. You can hear that in her voice.
I think it's always, it's almost like that thing that anything you enjoy doing for yourself, whether it's baking or knitting or whatever you enjoy doing, as soon as that becomes a job and something you have to do, it takes away the enjoyment almost of it, you know, of having a deadline or having to do this and having to do that. So I think it's completely right. I mean, she said in an interview in Australia in 1964 that she was born to do that, to work and entertain and try and please an audience. So yeah, I think it's absolutely correct that no matter what, if she could have done it more on her own terms, she would have carried on no matter what, almost.
she'd have had the control that later female artists had, which had been around the 60s, and not had that need to rely on men, it'd have been a whole different story.
Yeah. So, shall we have a little chat about the London sessions themselves then? And I suppose our thoughts on it, because they're studio recordings of most of what became the Carnegie Hall tour act. There's a couple of different songs in there, and I think, Sarah, you wanted to have a little chat about one song in particular on the London sessions.
Yeah, it's You'll Never Walk Alone. It's an important song, and it resonates as well. It resonated more after the Hillsborough disaster. My brother's a survivor. I know people who died in the disaster, so it's like really emotional. And I do love, obviously, Jerry Marsden's version, which a lot of modern people don't realise his version's a cover version, you know, of it's written by Rodgers and Hammerstein for Carousel. But no, she didn't sing it live often. I think she sang it in the Palladium one night, I think. Was it one or more?
I think it was one of the nights at the Palladium.
Because Oscar Hammerstein II had just passed away, so it was in tribute. And she'd recorded it once before in 1945-46, correct me if I'm wrong. But this version of it, it's the version for me. It's just, I can't listen to it without, you know, filling up, and it's just the new power in a voice coupled with the emotion that she's always had, which is now, due to what she's been through all her life, it resonates that much more. I'm not a singer or a musician, so I don't know the technical aspects. I can't analyse keys, octaves, notes or anything. I can only respond emotionally. So, I mean, that's really all. I remember listening to that when I was having quite a bad time, when I was like in my late teens and just laying on my bed by myself, and it just, without sounding cliche and corny, it just like really gave me hope to move on with what I was like going on with. So yeah, that's the recording, because she didn't sing it often and didn't record it often, so that's the one that resonates with me from the London sessions.
And maybe just to frame it a little bit, just in our kind of timeline with it. So after she moved to London, or in up to summer 1960 now, and it was, I think, early August, over a couple of nights, she completed the London session recordings at Abbey Road in London. And as I say, it's almost the same act as what would become her concert, save for the likes of You'll Never Walk Alone and the Palace medley and a couple of other bits with it as well. But it really is, to me, the London sessions are very much the definitive adult Judy studio performance. You know, I'd say Carnegie Hall is probably her definitive live performance recording, but for the adult Judy, the London sessions, and because they're from the 60s, the sound quality of them is so rich and vibrant. And even just as you're talking about You'll Never Walk Alone, Sarah, I know exactly, because she starts that song so quietly and soft, but by the end of it, she's belting it with such power and emotion that you think the microphone is going to explode.
True Judy fashion.
Yeah, Sacco.
Say, yeah, in true Garland fashion.
Marches and holiday songs. But and I know, Carly, I think you wanted to talk of a couple of songs, or one song as well, maybe from the London sessions. But there was one little anecdote that, because I just pulled out the CD of it there, and there's one little anecdote in it that I just love, and I think it was Lorna Smith who talked about it. But while she was rehearsing either the final phrase of Swanee or I Happen to Like New York, the chorus leader proposed that he would cut off the vocal group when Judy stops sustaining her own final note. She replied, "Oh, I don't stop, I hold it to the end." I just love that.
Yeah, I think that quote is also in John Fricke's World's Greatest Entertainer.
I think so.
And he takes it a little bit further by saying that the group, the vocal group, just sat back in awe once she said that.
Yeah. I think there's been a few memories over the years of people who, because there was some fans invited to attend those sessions, and they've all kind of commented on how professional she was. She showed up ready to work. There was no sort of, you know, superstar status or aura about her either, you know.
Yeah, I did get to meet a few of them. I used to be involved with the Judy Garland Club in London. I'm not involved with it anymore. Most of them have passed away now, but I was quite good friends with a member called Brian, who passed away recently. I used to write to him, and he used to tell all sorts of stories. They used to and he'd speak about the London sessions and all these stories that you hear about Judy's temperament and difficulty. It was never present, and if there was trouble, it was not anything that vicious or that she could help. It was usually due to not being well or the terror of having to be Judy Garland.
Yeah, 100%. Carly, did you want to jump in on the London sessions?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, Connor and I were actually just talking about it right before we hopped on, and I'll be honest, I hadn't listened to it very often for some odd reason, but I gave it another listen through over the last few weeks. And I mean, you already touched on it that, you know, because it was recorded in a studio, it's so robust. The sound is so amazing. You know, I was listening to it with my AirPods in at full volume, and her voice just goes right through you. And the one song that really took me aback was Do It Again. And I mean, we'll talk about that one a little bit more when we get into Carnegie Hall, but her rendition in the London sessions, oh my goodness, it is just beautiful. The way that, you know, it's such a sensual song, and you can just hear her breathing through every single line. And it's just, oh my goodness, it's just such a wonderful, wonderful song. And yeah, and I mean, I was listening to You'll Never Walk Alone. I listened to the whole thing, and the goosebumps. Like my eyes filled up multiple times through listening to that album. It's just it's amazing. It's really amazing. I am so envious of the people that were invited to watch that happen. I'd be a basket case.
I think we all would. I think I read, I think it was in the Steve Saunders book on the television show, that somebody commented that maybe this was more in relation to the television show, but her voice sounds as good as it does sound recorded. Live, that voice is even more incredible, if that's even possible.
Yeah,
I believe it.
Yeah, it's definitely a voice for the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, not to be negative, I know a few people who don't like her voice. Too much. But some of them I understand, because they prefer much more easygoing voices, like Karen Carpenter. But then there's also people who like people like Shirley Bassey and Whitney Houston, so I don't really get that. But no, I can probably, to us it's all amazing because she grabs us, but I can understand sometimes why it might be an acquired taste.
One thing about Judy, though, that I would point out to that is that she could do anything, right? I mean, she could do it soft, she could do it hard, she could do it robust. Thinking of that old Black Magic, so take that one for example, right? That one is so, it's not hard, it's not, you know, she doesn't go up really anywhere. It's so soft, and it's so gentle, and she could do that so well, and then she could go out and belt Swanee like it was nothing, right? So I mean, yeah, I obviously everyone has differing opinions. I can't hold it against anybody that don't like her voice, but that is one thing about Judy that always stuck out to me, was that she could do anything. She was very versatile.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I guess the next part of the puzzle is we talked about we'd mentioned some of the London Palladium shows there, but it really was in those August 1960 Palladium shows was, I think Sarah mentioned it there, the beginning of sort of the Act 1 Judy, Act 2 Judy concert presentation, rather than sort of an opening act of vaudeville, and she would come on and top the bill on the second act. So this was begin with the overture, Judy comes out, belts out however many songs, intermission, comes back and belts out however many more songs, which is pretty much the standard for concerts nowadays, if you leave out the pyrotechnics that are used in most arena shows these days. But yeah, that was the beginning of it. And of course, really on the back of that success and her having recovered from everything, and I guess maybe it built her confidence. Again, we mentioned Sid, he booked her to Paris, as she says herself, a tour on the continent. And she did Paris, Amsterdam. I think she did a couple of dates in Paris at a couple of different venues, actually. And I mentioned the Amsterdam shows, and I mentioned those two in particular because we have recordings of those concerts that we can go back to. Of the Paris one, unfortunately, is only the highlights that was recorded and broadcast on French radio. We don't have the complete concert surviving. We do have the complete Amsterdam concert, but there are kind of prequels to Carnegie Hall, you know, and some of us I know here have preferential versions of songs from some of these concerts. Sarah, I'm looking at you. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, one thing I will say is, obviously this is no disrespect to Norrie Paramore, do you pronounce it? Is it Paramore? I know she calls him Nolly Pratt at one point when he annoys. The orchestra was not the same as it was with Mort Lindsay.
No.
I mean, everything with Mort Lindsay's orchestra was just perfect. It was perfect marriage. But in Amsterdam, I've not listened to the whole concert for a while. I was listening to the interview early on, which I would like to discuss later on, but I love the version of How Long Could This Been Going On. This is a song I love. I love it in Carnegie Hall. Going back to what Harley says about she could do anything. I love Judy doing ballads. I mentioned this before a few weeks back when we were discussing it. I don't think she gets enough credit for it, and I actually think it was as much of a forte as the big Belton March and Holiday song. And this, How Long Has This Been Going On? Her version's quite bluesy, and I love it in Carnegie Hall. It does chill, it does relax me. It's really nice, but there's just something more bluesy about it in the Amsterdam concert, and really quite seductive and sensual, which we know Judy could do sensual really, really well. She just didn't get a chance to do it enough in her film career. And I really, really loved the orchestra during that. And the other one is Paris. My favourite version of Come Rain or Come Shine is from the Paris concert, along with the second version, which was on the Liza episodes of the TV series, when she actually surprises herself with the end note. But it's the ends of Come Rain or Come Shine. She always knocks it out of the park with that song. She never failed to get a standing ovation. But it was the end note. I'm not going to sing because I can't sing to save my life. She reaches it. It's so clear. It's so powerful. She reaches it with so much ease, and it just knocks me for six every time. But it's not spoken about enough because it's overshadowed with Carnegie Hall.
Is a stage weight.
I have more stage weights. She says. And the other thing I like from the Amsterdam concert is I like her interview.
Yeah.
And how she discusses how she sings. You know, she talks about the stuff she uses, the spray, and which there's a photo of somewhere. And she says I know she did have some training from Roger Edens, but they didn't do scales or things like that. He did do arrangements, but for someone who wasn't completely formally or classically trained, you know, she said, like, I do sing correctly. And you can see that with the, you know, the jaw dropping and things. I have had singing lessons in the past, no veil, so I do know a little bit. And she did sometimes sing on closed vowels. Barbara Streisand did it more than her, which jazz singers do, but they teach you not to in singing lessons. But the other thing they teach you not to do as well is to throw your head back and belt out, which Judy was known to do for effect, but that was more a performance effect. But no, if you do watch it, like, you can see it in Old Man River on the TV show, you can really see how good her technique is on that. Sorry, I'm waffling. Somebody else take it.
Please waffle.
Keep going. Well, I was just going to add on to that about the interview. I loved that interview as well. And the other thing that stood out to me with that one too is how amazing she sounded. Like, she just sounded so good, you know, like she was very eloquent in the way she was speaking. You could tell that she was excited to get up there. And yeah, again, the quality of the recording of that album was top notch. And it is one of my favorites, the Amsterdam concert. And I love in particular, I mean, of course she does this through all of, you know, Carnegie, through all of those concerts, but the way that she connects and engages with the audience. The one part in particular that I just love, and I've listened to it so many times, is right before she goes into It's a Great Day for the Irish, she swallows and breathes at the same time.
I love this.
Pops and she's, you know, she's hacking up, and that's included in the concert. And I love that. It just humanizes her. And she's, you know, always quick to make a joke about it. She doesn't, you know, dwell on it. She just makes fun of herself and moves right along and gets into it. And yeah, it's just such a great concert. Oh,
I love the because for anyone that hasn't heard it, there's two Dutch commentators sort of in the wings that are kind of hosting, because it's a radio, it was a live radio broadcast of the concert, so there's two Dutch, a lady and a gentleman, sort of hosting it. I have to dot what they're saying, but they're hosting it anyway. And she hears them at one stage in the wings, and she just comments to the audience, I could hear a marvelous woman off there just saying, oh, in other words, she's now taking a sip of water, she's now getting a handkerchief. I just thought it was so funny. And you talk about Come Rain or Come Shine, because in the Amsterdam concert, she says, I ran out of breath on the last note, and she says she's normally able to get away with it because she'll hit the note, take a quick breath and hit the note again. And then she says, but you can't when you're on the radio because of all the poor people listening. So I just think it's so funny.
Yeah. She's so great.
And of course, for me, It's a Great Day for the Irish. The fact that it was the live version of that, I love that so much.
Yeah, I love the accent that she kind of adapts to halfway through the song.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind if she actually says something wrong in it.
Oh no.
She sort of, there's one of those Irish names. She says Patrick O'Bannigan or something like that. She says it's actually Patrick, but she kind of says Patrick or something. It's
That's funny. Sarah and I were talking about the fake accent that she does for Little Nellie Kelly a little while ago. I mean, bless her heart. She tried. She really tried. But I mean,
there's one thing she couldn't do. She couldn't do an Irish accent.
There's very few can do, in her defense. So I'll give her a pass on Little Nellie Kelly and the accent. And when she says Jerry Kelly.
We're going to America.
Yeah, we're going to America.
It is so.
Oh dear. Yeah. So we're up to December 1960 with the Amsterdam concert. I believe went back to the States for Christmas 1960. And early in 1961, the official 1961 tour begins. I know it was interrupted for a couple of weeks when she went to film Judgment at Nuremberg, which she received an Academy Award nomination for. But April 23rd, 1961, Carnegie Hall. It was, I mean, Carnegie Hall is a massive carnivorous venue. It's very beautiful, but it is massive. And because it was a Sunday night show, a lot of the major Broadway stars at the time were on their Sunday nights off. So really, she had an audience of not only her fans and regular concert goers, but it was her peers were in that audience with her as well. And I know there's been accounts of, you know, Rock Hudson standing up on a chair and screaming, and all Julie Andrews and all these different people, you know, there with it. So I think the air was thick with support for Judy that night. And of course, as we know from listening to the album Harold Arlen, for anybody who doesn't know, who wrote every note of The Wizard of Oz, and pretty much every iconic Judy Garland song almost was in the audience that night as well. But does anyone have any comments on sort of that night before we go into the concert itself?
I do, but do you want to go first, Carly? Do you have?
Oh no, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, just discussing like the audience and you know, all the celebrities, and it was on the Concert Years documentary. Was it Rex Reed or was it what's his face? Look, I'm having brain fog now. Someone was saying Hedda Hopper had tears streaming down her face.
Yeah.
Now Hedda Hopper was known as being quite, you know, hard and tough. There was something else I wanted to say. Oh yeah, Ann Miller. Just like setting the scene. If you just listen to the opening of the album, and you know, you just imagine all these stars in the audience, you can feel how like palpable the atmosphere is. It's electric. And I think Ann Miller said something that she had like a force field in her body that has hit the back of the audience. And like June Allison said, like she'd get a standing ovation before she even did anything. So that's before we even like get to the actual concert.
All she had to do was just stand there.
Yeah, somebody said that, didn't they?
Yeah.
I've run out of songs. Someone said just stand there.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, I mean, you can feel you. Yeah, that's what we do, listening to it, and we're just listening to it, can't even see it, and that's how we go. But yeah, I mean, you can feel it. As you said, Sarah, you can feel it listening to the introduction, listening to that cheer as the audience is anticipating her taking the stage. You can feel that electricity, and I just can't even imagine what that would have been like actually being there and feeling that. You know, I can't remember who it was that said it, but someone said it was like a religious experience. I wish I could remember who it was, but I can look back in the book later. But yeah, I mean, all her friends in the audience, and you know, you could tell that she just had it that night. I mean, she had it all the time, really, but it's just that night in particular, there's just something so incredibly special about Carnegie Hall that, you know, it's a staple. It's a staple in that tour and in her entire concert career. Absolutely,
and we'll be talking about the the album itself later on. But I believe it's even a little bit of a miracle that we have the whole concert was recorded, because I don't think Capitol Records, which was her label at the time, were too keen on schlepping out a remote recording equipment or whatever to Carnegie Hall. I believe Freddie Fields had to talk them into it almost, which sounds bizarre now, but there you go.
Mm-hmm. For even though, you know, we know what Fields and Beagle and where now, thank God he did that.
Yeah, it's the one thing we can thank him for. So shall we jump in then, and we'll get into the Carnegie Hall album itself, and what we're going to do is really go through the concert song by song. We'll have a little chat about each of the songs, and I think this is where we get into the real God, yeah. Oh, I forgot to do this, so I'll do this and then we'll go into the song by song. We were talking about the London Palladium 1960 concerts, and what I neglected to mention, and we mentioned the Paris and Amsterdam ones as well, what I neglected to mention is she actually did a few other English shows after the Palladium, and one of them was in Leeds. And a couple of years ago, I actually got one of the programs from the Leeds concert. It's actually in, hang on, I'll take it out of this because I think it's reflecting on the camera. There we are. But this one I got, there's a little typed sticker up on the top of it. And actually on the back is her albums as well. But there's this typed sticker up at the top, and I'm just going to read it out because it's wonderful. And it mentions a song that she seemingly sang at this concert in Leeds that I've never heard her singing live, I don't think, in any other concert. So it says, Eric and Roy were lucky to see this concert at the Odeon Cinema, Leeds. It was the best live show they ever saw. Eric requested Danny Boy during the encores, which Judy sang, looking up to where we were sitting, fame at last.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, I just liked that. I've never heard her singing Danny Boy live like that.
I love the picture that they included on the front of that program. Look at that face. Oh.
Yeah, it's lovely.
I'm not entirely sure when that was taken or what period that's from.
It looks 50s, doesn't it? 90. In fact, isn't Sid Luft on that photo?
He's with a girl in that picture. I have the full one somewhere in my files, but I think it's their 1950, possibly. It's somewhere between 1950 and I think 1953. I'll have to look into that one later.
Cool.
But I love it.
It is, it's gorgeous. But I just wanted to mention it because it's the 1960s concert, 1960 concerts, which is the beginning of the Judy's 2-act, one-woman show. Shall we get into Carnegie Hall?
Let's dive in.
Dive right in. Song 1, I think it was at 8:40 p.m. Mort Lindsay raised the baton and kicked off on the orchestra. And of course, the opening is that overture. And for me, that overture is just, it's one of the greatest things I think you can ever listen to. To me, it's up there with sort of the likes of the Phantom of the Opera overture, the Gypsy overture, and then this Judy at Carnegie Hall overture. And actually that overture, I think, opened pretty much all of her concerts, really, didn't it, from sort of the late 50s onwards. But it's, for anybody who doesn't know, it's an overture of 3 of her songs. It's the Trolley Song, Man That Got Away, and Trolley Song, Over the Rainbow, and Man That Got Away. And it just, I can't even describe it.
You can feel it in your soul when you start listening to it, you know, that bum, 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 bum. Then, yeah, you know that you're in for it. You're in for a good show. And, you know, you just can't help but tap your foot to it, you know, and just get right into it. And you feel that anticipation of seeing her just building up inside you. Again, even though you're only listening to a record. I love the song selections. I love that, you know, of course, they chose 3 that are so, you know, perfectly associated with her. It's basically, you know, the theme of her whole career, right? And yeah, and I mean, and you can hear the audience clapping in between each as the song changes, right? And you know, you begin to imagine how Judy might have been feeling as she's standing in the wings, listening to that reaction. It's, I mean, that's an overture. The books.
Like her reaction, Shayna Alexander spoke about how in the A&E biography how she would work herself up for the concert in the wings, and she said she'd start, she'd be a bit calm, and then similar like to go and sing and she'd start clapping along, and then she said she literally would inflate, and then she'd grab hold of the curtain and I don't want to swear on the thing, but she'd just basically say F 'em, F 'em, F 'em, and she pulled on the curtain. But no, and also when you like did the overture then, Carly, it reminds me that the intro to the Concert Years documentary, if you've both seen that one.
Yeah.
Concert Years, it's playing that, and Alan King speaks about how it'd always start with bum 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 bum, and even that, when he's talking about it, gives me chills.
At the end of the overture, then you can hear it, not on the original album, but on the as what I mean by that is the 2 LP album. It is trimmed, but on the CD and the version on Spotify and anywhere else at the moment, you can hear the audience applause once she sails on stage. It goes on and on and on, and we mentioned she basically I think she did have a standing ovation without even opening her mouth, just for coming out on stage at the end of that overture. And when the applause eventually subsides, she doesn't do anything except just clap back at the audience and say, "Oh my." And her opening song then is When You're Smiling, with specially tailored lyrics, I believe, in the middle. It's a great opener to a concert, When You're Smiling.
Yeah, she knew how, I think Sid Luff said she knew what to open with. I think Mort Lindsay says it as well. She knew what to open with. She knew what to close an act with, open an act with, close the concert, what encores. But did you want to discuss the reason for the special lyrics?
I can do, because there was one. I'm doing this from memory now, but I think it was it in the late 50s it was first tailored for her when she started singing When You're Smiling, and the lyric about the if your husband bluntly tells you you're too stout, don't you pout, and she's kind of pouted, do this at herself a little bit. And the subpoena line, when a cop walks up and hands you a subpoena, I think there had been some court appearance or something like that had happened, which had been quite public. So again, I suppose it's Judy's little kind of wink and a nudge at the self-deprecating humor that she just loved, that she was like, you know.
So yeah, no, it's a great song.
Yeah, it's a great opener, and she picks it up.
It's building, it's not teasing, it's not
quite
that one.
Yeah, she almost lets loose fully at the end, and I love there's a clip floating around now. They say that it's footage from Carnegie Hall. I don't believe it is video footage from Carnegie Hall. As far as I know, it is filmed from another stop on the tour.
I do know what it is. It's from the 20th, not the 23rd, the May concert of Carnegie Hall.
You know the clip I'm talking about, where it's the last few seconds of When You're Smiling synchronized to the Carnegie Hall audio from the 23rd of April show, and you can just see how wide her mouth is, like sending this sound out to the audience. And then she follows that up with, honestly, what is probably one of my most favorite of her concert. One of my favorite of her concert performances is the Almost Like Being in Love, This Can't Be Love medley, which I love that she starts with no introduction or anything. They give her a note and then she just kicks off into this fabulous rendition. I love this medley. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I think this actually does make me think of you, Carly, because it was introduced in Gene Kelly film Brigadoon.
Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah. I totally forgot about that. Again, there's my brain fog. That, mind you, I've only ever seen that movie once, and it was a very long time ago. So it's a great song. I love that song too, and I love how I think it's around the 2:45-minute mark in the song. She slows it down and then just comes back and almost roars it. And it's brilliant. And you know, when she says, I swear that I'm falling in love, I swear that I'm falling in love with her, as she you know, as she's singing that. And yeah, I mean, it's just so great. And of course, that's followed up with the Paris hairdresser story.
That's a great story. It's so funny.
Isn't it hilarious? And she tells the same story, obviously, in the Amsterdam concert too. You know, in a very similar way. And, you know, I thought it was so funny how, you know, she's saying she's going into this hairdresser and the hairdresser saying, you must look nothing like Judy Garland, nothing like Judy Garland. She's like, well, don't you think I should look, you know, a little like Judy Garland? And it's just, again, there's that self-deprecating humor just coming through. And then she talks about the lacquer running down and her hair is just getting lower and lower. And, you know, she's making fun of herself. She's, you know, I'd love to know if that story was true. I think that's pretty funny.
I think there is.
The other week, a lot of her stories were embellished, but they had a kind of elements of truth. So she probably did have a new haircut, although that was, you know, dramatic, but she obviously, you know, exaggerated the part of that story. That always gets me though, because because she tells stories so well. I haven't got the image, but I can, you know, imagine my head is when she says, I came on stage balancing my new hair. It makes me laugh.
Oh, she's such a great raconteur. She really does paint just a wonderful picture of all of her stories. You can envision it so well, right?
The zipper story is my favorite, but we'll come to that later.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, with the safety pin.
You know, I think there is photos of her backstage in Paris with the very chic man who seems to be doing her hair. Now, whether, as Sarah said, I'm sure something happened. Somebody probably came and did do her hair, because there is a photo of it, but as to exactly what happened with the spit curls.
Yeah, these pictures of her with spit curls, which she mentions, spit curls in my day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I was imagining that when I heard this story. I was like, oh, that must have been what she was talking about.
The other thing I love, and it just reminds me of it, Carly, when you say that, you know, she tells the story in Amsterdam as well. I'm almost certain it was Norman Jewison, because what I'm getting at here is that she seemingly does all these little bits of things that feel so natural and organic to the performance, but they're actually something she's either rehearsed or she's done at the other shows beforehand. And I think it was Norman Jewison said he saw, I can't remember, was it at the London Palladium in the 50s or the Palace in the 50s, but he tells of being in the high up balcony watching Judy, and she does all these bits of things, and she takes her shoes off because her feet hurt, and she mops her brow, and she goes, what do we do next? And it's all wonderful. And she's talking to somebody, maybe it was him, after the show, and he tells her, I'm coming to see you again. And she says, oh, I'm not as good the second time. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, obviously you're going to be brilliant the second time. But then when he goes to see her the second time, he realizes the taking off the shoes, the mopping the brow, all the bits of business were all exactly the same, but they seemed so natural.
I think wasn't that Artie Shaw?
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah, I recall hearing that story, and you know, I mean, he tells it in an interesting way that kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. He goes on and ends the story with saying he felt like he was robbed with that, because he wanted it all to be natural, and then to find out that she's doing the same act in both shows. But I mean, Artie Shaw, we'll save it for another podcast.
I think what rubs the wrong way with Artie Shaw as well is he speaks about her singing over the rainbow and crying, and I think obviously that was quite sacred to her. And although it was an act, as Elaine Stritch says, as you mentioned the other week, Connie, she was never caught acting or in a lie, so she's still living it and feeling it. But he makes out as if this whole emotional thing was a pure act during Over the Rainbow. And yeah, he was not the nicest person, Artie Shaw, was he? So we'll go into that.
Well, he picked Lana Turner over Judy, so at this point in the concert, then we've had the overture, we've had When You're Smiling, and we've had Almost Like Being in Love, This Can't Be Love, which are very much up, let's belt, here we go. things, and then the Paris hairdresser story, and then we come to Do It Again, which is a whole different theme, feeling, everything all together.
There are so many, like the emotional roller coaster that this album takes you on is surreal. You know, I mean, you go, like you just said, go up to go, like, you know, she's telling this hilarious story and then just dives right into this incredibly sensual, sexy song. And it's just, oh my goodness, it's such a great tune. It's one of my favorites, both on this album and now the London sessions that she recorded, and it's beautiful. And I mean, I will mention, as someone whose head is so completely buried in the Judy Garland, Gene Kelly fandom ship, I've always imagined that could be a song that she would sing to him. I mean, it's ultimately about forbidden love, and you know, it's just. Oh, it just seems to fit them so well. Or I can imagine, had he been in the audience, you know, as she's singing, she would be looking at him. I can get more into that when we go on to our Jujina podcast later on, but it's a beautiful song. And you know, Sarah and I, we were all kind of talking about this yesterday, how, you know, there are some parts of the song that's a little bit inappropriate, I guess, for this time frame. There's a line in the song that says, "I may cry, oh no, 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 but do it again." And you know, that line, of course, kind of took me aback a little bit when I heard it, and I thought, wait, what is this song really about? And you know, I looked it up and I, you know, read through the lyrics, and like I said before, it really is about just a forbidden love, and not necessarily about any unwanted advances. But yeah, I mean, that's the only, I guess, negative thing about this song, is that, you know, in this day and age, I can see people having a bit of a hard time with it.
It's funny because I always, when I've ever listened to the song, for some reason, I've always felt it was about a one night stand.
Yeah, okay, I could see that.
You know, which again, for that time period that we're talking about, 1961, it's so risque, and you know, kind of you said it yourself, it's a very sexy, sort of a sensual, purring sort of a song. And as I say, I always thought it was kind of a one night stand, and I thought, God, Judy, you're kind of, fair play to you there now for that song. But yeah, I guess you can interpret it several different ways, which is probably the mark of a great song anyway.
Yeah, I think you're totally right about that. It definitely does sound a little bit more like a one night stand, but it's so sexy.
Yeah, it's very sensual. I echo what you said about some of the lyrics nowadays in the Me Too movement. Nowadays, you couldn't say, you know, I might say no, but do it again, because no means no. Do you know what I mean? But no, I always like similar, like, as someone who's like finding their sexuality for the first time, maybe in a one night stand, and they're enjoying it, but they feel like they shouldn't be. So, you know, you really shouldn't have done it, but, you know, do it again, and things like that. Said if it was written now, the lyrics would be very different. But to me, it's someone who's enjoying what they're discovering, and it is very sensual. The first time I heard it, I was listening to it, I think I came to Carnegie. I first found Carnegie Hall when I was about 16, 17, so that's quite late in my Judy fandom. But I was like, you know, this is a little bit risque, isn't it? You know, and the way she sings it as well. You know, it's, you know, she knew what she was doing. It's very, very sensual.
She gets very into it, very, very into it. She is completely feeling that song as she's moving through it. But
and actually, bear with me for a tick. I want to grab John's book, because I was flicking through this the other day, and he has a copy of the lighting cues from the concert. And for Do It Again, I just think it's absolute genius, and I think it really gives, oh God, trying to read this now because it's so small. So for Do It Again is a double shoulder spot And on second chorus, turn out the lights, cut one spot. Near spot should be a pin spot. So to me, I'm imagining her singing Do It Again. She must be standing at the microphone with the two spotlights on her, and then one goes out when she sings Turn Out the Lights. I just think it's genius.
And that's interesting, because there's a recollection from Mort Lindsay comparing Judy's concerts to Barbara Streisand's, and he works with her, and he said obviously Streisand had all the best lights, everything under control, you know, the best of everything. He says his exact words were, poor little Judy had just whatever lights were available to her, what sounds available to her. But it just shows with like just whatever little she had, it was always used to perfection for the perfect effect.
Yeah, actually, it's only as you're saying that I'm thinking back on that quote, and I'm wondering where that fits in, that there was some sort of lighting direction for the shows, but maybe that was just for the London Palladium show, I don't know.
No, there would have been direction, but she obviously didn't have the amount of lights and sound equipment that she had. She made the best of what she had.
I'm not going to sing if it's not perfect, okay? And then she switches gears again completely from the sensuality of Do It Again to You Go to My Head. Yeah, I love You Go to My Head because it's a foxtrot, I think, sort of rhythm to it or whatever, but she turns it into this fantastic, again, belty song at the end.
Yeah, it's funny. This song has always been a favorite of mine, but oddly enough, not the Judy version. Louis Armstrong does this song, and I remember hearing it as a kid, and I loved it. It's just, it's so jazzy. It's so soft. It's so, again, another kind of sensual tune. And then I heard Judy doing it when I listened to Carnegie for the first time, and I almost didn't recognize it because it's arranged completely different. Like the tempo is different. She has a more uppity version, whereas again, Louis Armstrong's was a little bit slower. And I don't get me wrong, I love Judy's version, of course, but I've always been curious as to how Judy would have done that in a more gentle way, how that would have turned out.
Yeah, that's interesting actually, because I was going to talk about this again, I guess a little bit later, but when you compare the three recordings, so the Paris, Amsterdam and Carnegie recordings, You Go to My Head gets faster each time. The Paris one is very like, you go to my head, and then Amsterdam is a little bit faster, and then Carnegie Hall is you go to my head. It really kicks off.
Yeah. And again, you're just on that emotional roller coaster, right? From you're down here from Do It Again, and then you're going right up into You Go to My Head. And one thing I did want to mention, just in between You Go to My Head and Do It Again, there's an interaction break there, and I love how there's an audience member that screams in the middle, "I love you," and she goes, "Oh, me too." It's so cute. And you think she's going to take a sip of water or something. I think she excuses herself to go take a drink, and suddenly the audience just starts laughing, and I can only imagine what she might have been doing with that glass. I so wish someone would have recorded this concert. Like, why wasn't it a TV show or a special? But anyway.
I have no idea, because like the following year, 1962, Carol Burnett and Julie Andrews did a TV special from Carnegie Hall. So I don't know why this, I mean, I know we mentioned about the Capitol Records recording it and all of that, but sure, why it couldn't have been recorded for a TV special is one of our great tragedies. Have you anything on You Go to My Head, Sarah?
No, I think you both sums it up. I'm not familiar with the Louis Armstrong recording, which is unusual because my granddad loved him, so I'll have to check that out.
I will send it to you on it's on YouTube, and it's actually one of the songs that I listen to when I'm writing, because it brings me back into that era. There's a section, I think it's like, it's quite long actually. It's about 4 or 5 minutes of just, of just him on the trumpet, and it's beautiful. I'll send it to you. It's quite a song. And then you hear Judy's version, and it's like, woo! It's quite a contrast. Like I said, I almost didn't recognize the song.
It is amazing, actually. Sometimes I come to certain songs from Judy first, and then you hear other versions of it, and you realize she really had very much her own interpretation of songs. Like, it really was her style. The only one that's coming to my head is Some People from Gypsy. When she does her version of Some People from Gypsy, it sounds so completely different to the stage version of it. And obviously Liza's version was a very different interpretation of it as well. She took it to a breakneck speed, but it never ceases to amaze me how she seems to make a song sound totally different.
She personalizes every one.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was Charles. She was saying that she didn't sing in a certain 40s, 50s, 60s style. She sang in Judy Garland style. And then, there is a big difference. And then again, I love the Joe Mankiewicz quote that he says she didn't sing like the other girl singers. I mean, this probably is a bit sexist nowadays. Again, we're looking at it from a different perspective, but he said she approached the song like a man.
Yeah.
And I think, I hope you think some of her songs on Carnegie Hall, the really robust ones, she reminds me of like a male opera singer. Sometimes the way she approaches it, it's quite unusual.
Yeah, and I think some of that, even again, I know it's kind of its time, but I think some of that is possibly we can see it in some footage, but mostly from the photos of the concerts from that time. Like, she's standing, her stance is like the feet are kind of stood apart. She's in command, and I think that's the almost masculine sort of, I'm going to do this. It's not like a kind of a evening frock, and kind of it is a little bit more masculine, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just waffling.
We're good at
that. But she brings us then from the heights again of You Go to My Head, she brings us into Alone Together as the next ballad. Alone Together is absolutely one of my most favourite Judy ballads. I love the lyrics, I love her interpretation of it. It's her, I think John said this before, it's her communicative power. She really makes it feel as if she's singing this song, just her to another person, and there's nobody else there, kind of thing. Yeah, it's really is one of my most favorite songs of hers, and she didn't sing it enough as far as I'm concerned.
Well, this is one of the ones that reminds me a bit like operetta, that I can't sing, so I can't really say, but the notes on when she sings Alone Together.
Yeah.
That really, that's, I've never really heard it sung like that. It's one of my favourites too. And again, it's not like sensual like Do It Again is, but she makes it sensual.
Yeah, she does, and we'll have a little bit more, I guess, to talk about that on the when we talk about the album later on, because the live recording was replaced on one of the subsequent releases. I think on the original album the live recording was there, but isn't it on one of the later albums they had to put in the studio version of it from That's Entertainment, but we'll come to that later.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, I'll actually have to refresh myself slightly as I'm thinking of it, but we'll come to that. Carly, anything on Alone Together?
I don't think I have anything else other than, I think, Sarah, you just mentioned it, that, that very last verse just makes the hairs on the back of your neck just stand up. She holds that note so well, and it's a great song. It's amazing. I wish I had more to add, but I don't.
It was brilliant.
It was brilliant.
And then we are following along together. Then we're taking another change of pace altogether, and we have the jazz section of her show, where you can hear her invite the boys from their usual places in the orchestra into kind of a more condensed place. And I believe, again, looking at the lighting cues, this was kind of lit a little bit differently as well. But this is the bit where she talks about being known, if she's known at all, for singing marches and holidays or just songs. And she likes to sing jazz, and they won't let her, but I don't know who they are. And we've got a jazz quartet coming up. So I'll just mention the songs because they all kind of are in the one section. So she goes into Who Cares, Putting on the Ritz, How Long Has This Been Going On, and Just You, Just Me. And this is her jazz singer section of it.
This is one of those, so often, when she's bringing the boys down stage, I try so much to listen to the interaction, but I can't always hear what they're saying because there's lots of giggles and things from the audience. And then there's a bit of a joke about was it the drummer's sticks or something? She says about sticks.
Yeah.
Your sticks always makes me chuckle, but I don't know what she's talking about.
It gets a laugh off the audience. She says, "Have you got your sticks?" And then everyone just starts giggling.
Yeah, and she says, anything else you need? So I'm presuming he's just like getting a few things together. And but I absolutely I wish Judy had sung more jazz.
Yeah.
I love this section. And How Long Has This Been Going On is just one of my favourites, as I've spoken about before. And I love her version much more than the Audrey Hepburn version.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Audrey Hepburn, but she wasn't really a singer.
No.
I just love this section.
I love how she starts Who Cares with the 1 2 1 2 3. Oh, it works. Again, it's another thing that just humanizes her and just makes it feel like you're right there at the concert with her. And I love this section too, specifically Putting on the Ritz. I have things to say about that one. Are we allowed to dive into that one now?
Dive in.
Are we done? Okay. So I've heard this song, of course, I've listened to Carnegie Hall so many times, but I've only just realized, and maybe someone else out there watching this or one of you two can maybe clarify, but she changes the lyrics in that song to fit a woman. She femalizes the song. That's now a new word, by the way, femalize. So the original lyrics say, different types wear a day coat and pants with stripes, cutaways, but she changes it to different gowns upon a bevy of highbrows down on the levee, all misfits. So she sings it that way here, and she also sings it that way in the Amsterdam recordings, but that's, as far as I know, that's the only 2 times that she sung it that way. And there's a spot, it's the second time she sings it in the Carnegie Hall album, where she turns away from the mic and you can hear her laughing. And I'm pretty sure that she is making that up, that that's just her addition to that song. And last night I fell down a rabbit hole trying to figure out, the background on this. But I went, I searched Google, I searched everywhere for those lyrics to see who wrote them, if it was perhaps a different version of a song somewhere else. And the only thing that came up is the Rufus Wainwright, Judy Does Carnegie Hall. So I think she might have added that herself and made that up herself. Which, if she did, that is amazing. I love that.
Well, there's 2 things on that. She definitely did. Again, going back to the television show on Here's to Us, which was meant to be the series finale. I think she does change lyrics on the spot in that. And I think that's written in Steve Saunders' book, that she's meant to sing the first chorus again, but she changes it to "Here's to you for letting me do what I'll do to the end of my days," which seemingly she did there and then on the spot. So that it's entirely possible. It's also, I wonder, because I think that Roger Edens do a lot of little bits of special material for sort of uncredited over the years. So I wonder if maybe he wrote something as well. It's, you know, it's hard to know.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting observation, and I mean, Putting on the Ritz, that's such a classic song. I've heard it I've heard it so many times through the years, and I never noticed that in Carnegie Hall it's slightly different. And it wasn't until last night, when I was kind of going through everything again, that I realized there's something different about this song. What's not clicking? And that's it. Like I looked up the lyrics online to that song, and even anything that's posted online that Judy Garland had sung, the lyrics all state the original lyrics. So she must have just switched that kind of on her own. And if so, that's magnificent. I love it. See, look at her. She was so ahead of her time, you know, bringing, the women's movement.
Yeah. I think I'll be going off doing homework now after this, going, how can we get to the bottom of this? Love the new discoveries, even, after all this time, when little things that you've never noticed before come up.
Yeah, I do. I love it.
That's where having a bum memory really is a plus, because every time you read something, you feel like you're reading it for the first time. You get all excited.
Oh my God, it's new.
I'm like that with photos. Then Carly, oh, I think this is new, and then she's like, "Oh, I've seen that," and then I check, and it's like, yeah, I did actually have this saved on an old computer about 10 years ago. I think it's new, and it's not. Oh.
I love again, we always talk about her ending to the songs, but Putting on the Ritz in particular, because she brings it down almost, and it's like, putting on the Ritz, putting on the Ritz, putting on the Ritz, and just then knocks it out. Whoa.
Yes, I love the key change there. Yeah. She's down, and then she soars back up again. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
And after her jazz section, then she brings us into an absolute Garland classic, and brings us into The Man That Got Away, which of course never fails to, the minute the trombone or whatever starts with that introduction, it never fails to bring applause from the audience, because they know what's coming.
Oh, it's amazing. And I love this rendition in particular. It reminds me very much of the one that she did on her 1962 television special, where she's sitting in that room at the table, and she's singing right to you. It reminds me very much of that. It's a little bit more sensual than the original one. It's a bit slower, and you can I'm envisioning the 1962 performance every time I listen to the version on Carnegie. It's great.
Well, The Man That Got Away is my favorite Judy song, and Stu, even though probably the lyrics go totally against this, Stu did actually play that to me as he proposed to me last year. What my favourite Judy song was, and I told him, and he played that as he had me in a blindfold and things, and then on me, so it's even more sentimental now. But it's always been my favourite Judy song, and I love how she, like in a live show, she trills more than, she didn't trill in the original. She trills the T's. I can't even do it. She says you through the mill. Particularly on the 62 special you've just mentioned. But now, any version of The Man That Got Away is always a favourite of mine. So there's not much more on that.
There really isn't a bad version of The Man That Got Away. They're all so brilliant.
It was just one of her best, like, torch songs that, again, she you believe everything she's singing without question. You know, it's I'm sorry, I'm lost in my thought of it there.
I think what drew me into that song originally, I'm kind of getting a little bit off topic, so I'm just going to talk briefly about A Star Is Born. But when you kind of first see her start to sing that song in A Star Is Born, and you know the backstory and the history of Judy before, how, you know, it had been at least 3 years before she had made a movie, and you can feel how much effort she's putting into every single lyric that she's singing. And especially when she goes up and does that all-time thrill. I'm of course not going to do it because I cannot sing either, but it's almost like she's begging you to love her. Please love me, please give me another chance. And that always just stuck with me. It gives me chills every time I hear it, in all of the versions really, but that was really what stood out to me the first time I heard it in A Star Is Born. It's such a powerful song. This podcast is just going to be me just saying every song is powerful and brilliant, but that's what we're here for. So,
but it's true.
Yeah, the biographers claim that she sang that about Joseph L. Mankiewicz. I don't know how true that is. You know, she has a few great loves of her life, didn't she? So it could have been about many men.
Mm.
We all know it was about Gene Kelly.
I actually I played that song for somebody years ago that hadn't heard it before, and they listened to it and he said, wow, who is she singing that about? Well, she's, as depicted in the film, she's not, but I'm sure in her head she had somebody she was singing about.
No, well, the film version's very different because she's meant to be rehearsing with the band.
Yeah.
So she's smiling things throughout it, and it's not a song that you smile through. She never sang it like that again, like she did in the film. She always sang it for what it was after that. But I always found that interesting.
And doesn't she kind of giggle at the end of it too in A Star Is Born? Yeah, like,
I guess it's because, as Sarah said, like the setting of the song is meant to be sort of a jam session, kind of rehearsal-y sort of a thing. It's not meant to be portrayed as her singing after breaking up with somebody or something. But I'm sure, you know, her concert presentations of it were far more dynamic and dramatic.
It foreshadows. It's good foreshadowing used in the film, because obviously she's singing it when she's still very naive, you know, happy. But it's a hint of things to come. Yeah. Obviously he dies at the end. Spoiler alert, sorry. So he does get away.
I guess we better go back to Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, yes. But we are literally going to be here all night, aren't we, as she said?
Yeah.
Stay all night.
I think we're almost in the second half of Carnegie, so we should be breezing through now.
We're getting there.
We're getting there.
Judy's Act 1 closer then is San Francisco. After the man that got away, into San Francisco with her little opening, little dig, poke the fun, I guess, at Jeanette MacDonald, who originally sang it. But the thing I love about San Francisco is, I can't remember who said it, but I remember reading or hearing somebody saying that you can almost feel her joy in belting a song for her audience. And I think that's captured in San Francisco, because she lets loose. I think she really lets loose here, because it's the Act 1 closer. She's really knocking what Ann Miller said about that force field to the back of the theatre. She is really doing it, I think, in San Francisco. And you can hear her even after. She's so out of breath after doing it, because I think she's just filling herself to hit those great big belting notes. But yeah, I just, San Francisco is a joy for me always.
It's funny, you pretty much, I mean, that's exactly what I had written in my notes for San Francisco. We have the same reaction to it. I mean, it's I think likely because, like you said, it is the end. It's what she closes off the first act of her concert with. And I think that's why the energy is so palpable in that song. It's, you feel it. They've already been there for an hour. They're into the concert, and the audience's reaction is phenomenal. They're all just screaming, clapping, and as you said, she's out of breath even. And I think this is the very first time in this whole act that we actually get to see that, okay, she's actually getting tired. Like, she's out of breath, she needs a break. But yeah, it's great. I love how into the song she got.
Yeah, I've got a lot to say about San Francisco. Funny, I was listening to it last night thinking I had it on really, really low as I was falling asleep. And then I just saw, I was half asleep and saw like Stu come in my room and go, "Why have you got that on so loud?" And I'm thinking, it's not. It's just here. Do you know what I mean? And Dory Sherry, who didn't always have nice things to say personally about Judy, well, it depends which book you read, because she did support me in his early MDM career, but we'll do another podcast on that. He was on the Hollywood Greats, the 1978 version with Barry Norman, that I've recommended to you, and he's talking on that. And he was at Carnegie Hall, so he obviously did admire her. And he said she starts and then she just goes this bit higher, like teasing, building the audience. And he says, you think she can't go any further, but then she goes higher, and she just goes higher and higher. And then you can see, obviously she sang it again on the 1962 TV special, which I will discuss that when we discuss recreations later on. But you can see how much she puts into that. It's not just the actual vocals, it's the whole performance, her body actions and everything. Yeah, she's exhausted by the end of it. You can tell why.
Yeah. I'm glad you actually mentioned the 62 special to talk about later, because it's the closest we'll get to a glimpse of what Carnegie Hall looked like. And we will talk about it I guess properly later, but yeah, like it's almost gymnastic, her movements, I guess, during San Francisco. She's kicking her legs and she's strutting around that stage.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that leads us into the intermission, where we can, as she says, have an intermission and drink or smoke and do whatever it is we do during intermission. And I love then she says, "I can't wait to see you again," and scurries off. So kicking off Act 2 of Carnegie Hall, or as it was in the programme, More Judy. First of all, the song is That's Entertainment, but I love on the recording that you can hear, it comes in a few seconds, I guess, early, and you can hear the musicians talking, and you can hear somebody going, "Okay, Mort, okay, yeah, okay." And then next thing it's just and Judy's out, and That's Entertainment. It's one of the classic songs, I guess, of all time, and it's a fantastic opener, I think, for the second act, because it's bright, it's breezy, it's bouncy, and I can just imagine her in a sequined outfit sort of like this, just bouncing almost around the stage.
With these some of the footage from the second concert, actually, I don't know whether that's the same concert or whether it's another one, but you can see her moving about to That's Entertainment, kicking her legs and doing this and things like that,
And she dances with Mort, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does. Yeah, so obviously, the closest we've got to seeing these is on a TV show.
Yeah.
She did similar things, but not always quite the same. But no, it's always a fun. It's got such funny lyrics as well, the song That's Entertainment.
Yeah. I love as well that I think it's at the Palace recording from 1967 when she repeats That's Entertainment, and it's quite a fast enough tempo, and she gets lost in the lyrics and she goes, "Oh, somebody from MGM must have written these." Carly, anything on That's Entertainment from you?
Nothing really else to add, except of course she finishes That's Entertainment with the story of the British press. She's not plump, she's fat. She's fat, but she's jolly. And that's another one of the stories through this album that I love so much. It's that the self-deprecating humor. She loved that reporter following her around saying that she looked marvelous, that she even gave her a ride home. And then this is what she finds in the paper the next day is she's fat. And, oh boy, it could only happen to Judy.
The British press is still like that.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, they're unreal. Nothing has changed in the 60 years, 61 years, whatever, since, I say 61 because that might have happened in 1960. But in that time, nothing has changed. In fact, they're worse probably now than...
Say that's another good example how she took something, I mean, that must have been quite unpleasant for her, but she turned it into a funny story.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of funny you guys were mentioning about the British press, because I think in Lorna's book, one of the parts I read about when I was reading through the London section said that one of the reasons why she was so happy in London was because the press was so kind to her there, and they weren't kind to her in LA. And reporters would just follow you around and interrupt you. Whereas in London, she was able to do her own thing. She was finally able to go out with the kids. She was able to, have a meal out without having to worry about being photographed and find yourself in the paper the next day. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting how, she felt so comfortable, but then there was just such a, not a very pleasant story in the paper the next day,
She says it to Terry Thomas, the British comedian, on the television show. She repeats that story, but she says something to the effect of, "Oh, I want to talk to you, by the way, about the British press." So yeah, I remember that story all right in Lorna's book about the differences between the US press and the British press. But yeah, I don't know, my experience, because even though I'm in Ireland, we would get a lot of the British publications here. But my experience with them is that they're, well, these days, that they are exactly the same as Judy said. They will say something like a big headline saying fat, in it. So it is interesting.
I often wonder how different Judy's outlook might have been with social media, or how she would have viewed that as a platform. I mean, she loved to reach out to her fans, right? She loved that connection with her audience. And I mean, now social media just brings celebrities that much closer to their fan base. And I wonder how Judy would be with that, how she would, if she would like it, if it would be a little bit, frightening for her. Yeah, I've always been curious about that.
What I've often noticed though is some of the really bigger stars, I mean big names, like I'm talking Adele, Lady Gaga, the real internationally known ones from today, they're not that active on social media. Like I don't think Adele really posts anything on social media unless she's announcing a concert or announcing Saturday Night Live or something that she's doing. So I don't know, would Judy have had more of that approach? I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of the big stars have people running them for them as well, don't they?
Yeah.
But I wonder, like, anything negative. I mean, somebody like Ricky Gervais, he kind of like thrives on the negativity because he just uses it to just wind them up. Then, if you know what I mean, and it's really amusing. So, I don't know, because she had that humour, whether she be one of them who just give it back.
James Blunt does that as well. Did you ever see any of his responses on Twitter?
No.
Oh, they are so funny. Somebody will tweet him something horrible and he'll reply to it with like a biting comeback, and it's brilliant.
I think that's exactly how Judy would handle negativity on social media.
It could well be.
She was a savage, so you could dish it out.
Again, it's very much the theme of this whole of the whole Carnegie Hall album, but following That's Entertainment, she switches gears completely into I Can't Give You Anything But Love. Funnily enough, for me personally, this is not one of my most favorite songs in the world. I don't know why. I just have, it's never been one that's appealed to me an awful lot. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on it.
I feel like this song is something that that you would maybe find Judy singing kind of to herself at the piano, nobody around. Like it's just a very soft, gentle song. I like it. I like it quite a lot, but that's kind of my impression of it, is I can just imagine her doing that.
Well, she sang it a lot, so she obviously liked it. Sang it on TV a lot as well. I like it, but it's one that had to grow on me. I used to find it a little bit boring, but then again, it did. I did grow to appreciate, because I've mentioned I love singing ballads. I love the easiness of it, the smoothness, and just completely different from That's Entertainment. And now she must have been so out of breath after that, the control she had. You can't even hear her breathing in I Can't Give You Anything But Love, and that's what stands out to me. Because if I tried to do that, I'd be breathing all over it, trying to sing the ballad.
And then we come to, I guess, one of the apexes of Act 2, which is Come Rain or Come Shine, which we touched on there earlier.
And there's a little bit of isn't there a bit of a false start when the song comes on? And, you know, again, that's another one of the little bits of the full album being posted, exactly what we hear, you know, happen that night. It really brings you into the hall right along with the rest of the audience, because, you know, you get to see all these little blunders. It's a great song. I did want to share a quote actually from Melissa Manchester. It rings completely true to this song, and of course many others through this album. Is she kept getting deeper into the inner life of the song, singing and holding notes that seemed to go on forever, and hearing that crack in her voice and saying, is she really falling apart, or is it me? And that you know, especially at the end of that, of Come Rain or Come Shine, when her voice does do that little crack, and it's incredible.
That quote's from the Concert Years documentary. I remember saying that on that. I've spoke about Come Rain or Come Shine, how much I love the Paris version, but I still love the Carnegie Hall version. People speak about how she knew how to build up a song, you know, start quite like kinds of average, and I think Come Rain or Come Shine is the perfect example of that. I still don't know how she hits those final notes every time I watch or listen to it. As I said before, on the TV version, the episode with Liza, she even surprises herself. But then they said again, I'm going to digress a little bit. Victor Moan was talking about the duets, the West Side Story and the Porgy and Bess one. They pre-recorded them because they were going to be in an album, because most of the TV shows the songs were sung live, except for a few that were going to be on an album. And you can always tell when she's miming, because she wasn't great at lip syncing. And he said they go and record it, and then they go back and listen. And he said she'd always be surprised at the notes that came out of herself. Oh, I always imagine Come Rain or Come Shine as one of those.
I love that reaction on the TV show when she hits that note and you just see her go, oh my goodness. Yeah, and the other thing, Come Rain or Come Shine, actually has kind of, and specifically the Carnegie Hall version, has kind of had a little bit of a second life in the last year or two, because the RuPaul's Drag Race actually used the song as one of their lip sync songs on a particular episode, but it brought it into kind of a whole other community that might have always, you know, known it. But there was a lot of, if you look up on YouTube, Judy Garland, Come Rain or Come Shine, nearly all of the videos are, oh, this is the song from RuPaul's Drag Race. So I think it's encouraged people to look it up, which can only be a good thing. And then after she says herself the insanity of Come Rain or Come Shine, we have another little chat with the audience, and she introduces Harold Arlen, who we mentioned was in the audience. And she says herself, we do practically all of his music all the way through the show. And then we have another, I guess, kind of little mini section within the show where she brings us to the piano with Mort Lindsay, and she does 3 songs at the piano. You're Nearer, A Foggy Day, and If Love Were All. Purely her and the piano, and this is sort of Judy unplugged.
She was really, really good unplugged as well.
Yeah.
I keep going on about the ballads. I love listening to her just singing smooth and easy. If Love Were All, I always find must have resonated with her quite personally. The lyrics that are really, you know, especially when she sings the lyrics. I only have, what is it, a talent to amuse. I think she must have felt like that sometimes. I've got a funny story about Your Nearer. Brian, who I mentioned earlier on from the club, sadly passed away recently. He used to repeat this story to me, not realising, you know, that he'd already told me, bless him. But he saw a show in De Montfort in Leicester. Now, there's no documentation of her performing in De Montfort in the early 60s, but she did actually perform there. Because there was a few members there who were actually attended it, and they used to say it was like on par with Carnegie Hall. And he spoke about her singing Your Nearer, and it was such a quiet song, and she's singing, she's really into the song, and then there was just a knock, just came out of nowhere, and she just in the middle of the song just said, "Come in," and then went straight back into the song.
Brilliant story.
He told it a lot better than me.
I have to say, I love If Love Were All as well, and I've heard a couple of singers sing it. Nobody kind of touches it the same way Judy does, but it's an old coward song, isn't it? So it's very sort of sophisticated, kind of suave sort of lyrics with it. But it's I've always felt as well, I agree, Sarah, that it I think she's almost singing about herself with that talent to amuse line.
But that's actually, I wanted to, mention the, sorry to interrupt, the horrible David Shipman trying to turn things into negativity.
Oh, yes.
Stories in his book. And obviously he wrote this prior to the CD releases. So we only had the edited LP without the audience interaction. So he used to just make things up basically. The first thing he said, that she'd been like in a dressing room all day refusing to come on stage, which we know didn't happen for Carnegie Hall. That was one thing. And then the other one, he said he mentioned how brilliant the concert was and everything, how good. He said, but there was one dicey moment where she got confused or forgot something, whatever his version was, and someone from the audience shouted, "Have another brandy." And he said it through her so much that she introduced, actually, I think it's Your Nearer from the film Bittersweet, is it? Is it Your Nearer? Or
This Is Your Nearer. I think so, yeah.
Is it If Love Were All? It's one of those two. She introduced the song as the film Bittersweet instead of the song. But if you actually listen to it, she doesn't. She introduces the song and then says it's from Bittersweet, which people didn't pay enough attention to. Nothing he says actually happened.
Yeah.
So that just shows you how he could, just spin a yarn or whatever.
And while we're on, we'll have to probably snip this bit out as well because it's not relevant to Carnegie Hall. But while we're on his book, just as you were talking there, it's made me think of something. Doesn't he say that that her appearance on the Andy Williams show was taped in whatever September or something of the year, when she was in such a numbered state that they had to build the set so that she could kind of hold on to things to stand up around?
It was probably him, yeah.
I think it's him. And if you watch the Andy Williams show, she does get happy on that, and she's dancing up a storm with the chorus boys. There's nobody holding her up.
Oh, I know. He mentioned the I know the Cole Porter medley on the Oscars in '65. I know the arrangement wasn't great. That was obviously Roger Eden's, a rare blip for him, but
yeah,
he mentioned she looked really bad inside, really bad, when I actually loved the extra weight on her in 65. I think she looked so healthy for those days. And she did her best with a really bad arrangement. So he must have thought at the time, well, people aren't gonna, before the internet, he mustn't have realised we'd be privy to all these, extra clips and behind the scenes footage. You do need to read it, Carly, just to see how bad it is.
I don't think I will be bothering with that. There's too many great books out there that I have not read.
Mine is like falling apart. My copy of this, it's literally in pieces.
And it can stay that way.
And it can stay that way. It's buried in the bottom of a thing here, and it's like I
think that's why when everyone was horrified over the Gerald Clark book, and I was horrified because there's some even worse things in that book, but it was I'd been sort of prepared with the Shipman book. So.
The Clark book was the very first one that I read. So the Clark book is like your Shipman book to you. Like I read it when I I didn't read the whole thing. I slammed it shut and put it away after that really horrible anecdote. But that was my very first introduction into her personal life. And to read that, as you had mentioned before, Sarah, I wasn't really a kid at the time, but I was still young enough to, that's my childhood hero. That's my childhood idol that you're speaking about that way. And I don't understand where these people get off writing horrible stories about her like that. It does nothing to preserve her legacy. It's completely pointless. Even if these things were true, it's pointless. It's pointless to include those things in a book that is supposed to celebrate her life. And, I guess their excuse for it is that drama and negativity sells. I mean, clearly it does, because it's what I remembered most. And, this biography clearly made such an imprint on you, Sarah, as well. So I guess it's done its job, but it's horrible to be introduced to her in a book like that. Mm-hmm. It's not who she was at all.
And she was hated as well. She was quite private. So can you imagine how she'd have responded to those stories getting out there?
Yeah.
When you think about the fact that when she was going out with Mickey Deans in 1968, 1969, I think she's on record, or somebody's on record, at saying that she didn't like the idea of them living together without being married. And in that sense, there was, I'd say, one part of her time, one part of being a traditional lady, so if she was concerned, if she felt uncomfortable living with a man that she wasn't married to, I highly doubt she'd be impressed with that book. The only thing he does say, I think it's in the Gerald Clark book, is he opens up one of the chapters and says, school teachers like to teach their pupils that perfection is not a real word, that it has to be prefaced with something like almost perfect or whatever. But how does one then describe Judy at Carnegie Hall? I'll give him that little bit.
I like that.
Again, we probably have a podcast on books, can't we?
Probably, yeah.
Yes.
After the piano section then of Carnegie Hall, we are into another up-tempo one, and which again is actually one of my favorites, Sing With the Strings of My Heart. Obviously it's a song that kind of followed Judy throughout her career from MGM onwards, and this is her swing arrangement on it, and you can hear the joy in her in this one, I think.
I love this one so much. And I mean, of course, because it's a song that she carried with her through from the very beginning of her career to the very end. You can tell that it's a song that she identified with so much. That she loved it. And, of course, with this one and with You Made Me Love You and For Me and My Gal, it's a song, those are songs that she had sung all the way throughout. And it's interesting to hear the differences in her voice and the different ways that she sung the song all the way throughout. It's really quite remarkable. I love that one.
Yeah, no, I love Sing When the Strings in My Heart. I much prefer the up-tempo version to the ballads as much as I love ballads. It's quite personal to me because along with Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, it's my mum's favourite Judy song, so whenever I hear it I think of my mum as well. But no, I just echo everything you say. I love it, and I love how much like fun she's having with it.
And again, we switch gears yet again after Sing With the Strings, and we head into Stormy Weather, which really is the last, I guess, acting piece. I don't mean acting piece in that way, but the last kind of layered, complex story song, I guess, of the night. And what I want to finish up on, this is a phenomenal performance.
Yeah, it's associated with Lena Horne quite a lot. And I'm just studying the film Stormy Weather for my dissertation, but I'm usually one who, when a song belongs to someone, it stays their song, do you know what I mean? And I will probably cause controversy with some people. I think Judy did steal it away from her a little bit. Sorry.
Sarah, how dare you? No, just joking.
And that's taken nothing away from Lena Horne. But no, and especially, again, about the TV series, the Carnegie Hall version and the version she does on episode 5 of her TV show. I think just after she tell the moth story just before that.
Yeah.
But no, it's like a dramatic best, as you said.
Yeah.
He's acting the song.
What about you, Carly?
All I can do is really echo what you both have already said. It's a brilliant song, and the way that at the very end of this song, the way that she kind of drags out the keeps raining all the time, and she gets really low, and again there's that roller coaster that this concert just brings you on. It's wonderful. I love it. I can't say anything else about it, really.
We're coming into the I guess the home stretch of it. I'd say from this point onwards, because her next piece is the Judy's Olio medley, the You Made Me Love You for Me and My Gal Trolley song medley, originally known as Judy's Olio medley. And then we're into the encores then after that. And I have to say, in all the years I've been listening to Carnegie Hall, it's from this medley, You Made Me Love You medley, to the end is the bit that I've listened to the most. I don't know, there's something about the audience reaction, her performances from this point onwards in particular, I don't know, it's just an apex, I think. But the You Made Me Love You medley, I think my most favourite bit of that whole thing is, isn't there one little bit in it, you can hear someone in the audience call out to her going, Judy, Judy! And that just captures the whole thing for me.
I 100% agree. It is such a wonderful medley. And I always get a little bit of a little bit giddy whenever I hear her sing For Me and My Gal, because of course that's one of my favorite Judy films. And I will say though that it's never quite the same unless her and Gene Kelly are singing it together. They have both sung it separately, and it just doesn't have as much effect without, with them solo as it does when they're together. And there's actually this is a little bit off topic, but not really. Gene Kelly performs this by himself, and I believe 1973. He's doing a special with Frank Sinatra, and at one point, and it's also a medley, and at one point, as For Me and My Gal is just starting, Gene Kelly looks up to the sky, and it's you can tell by the look on his face and how he starts it that was him looking up at Judy. And yeah, it's beautiful. I love that song so much. And of course, again, all three of those songs, it takes you right through her early days at MGM, and it's wonderful.
Is that on YouTube, the Gene Kelly Frank Sinatra? I've never seen that, actually. I want to see that.
It is. I will send it to you after we're done. I've got a list now of all the YouTube videos I have to send you. It makes me up a bit.
It does, because obviously he cried when he introduced us to the inductors are into the Hall of Fame,
The whole
didn't he?
thing.
And they've still got the sheet he was reading off, which was drenched in tears. Which for someone who was not known to be like an emotional man is quite like something. But no, like Judy's Olio, it's nostalgic, takes you back to her films. I love how she always asks the audience to sing along to For Me and My Garland, and the trolley song, it's from my favourite Judy film, aside from Oz, which I always keep separate. So it's just fun, brings a smile to my face. Maybe Love You is important as well, because it really, that sort of set her on the road to stardom, really.
Yeah, that really catapulted her whole career, right?
Yeah. That was like her, if it was in today's time, that was like her first single that was gone straight to number one sort of thing, And talking of Judy sort of taking songs that belong to somebody else and making them her own, she comes at us with an Al Jolson chestnut, which is Rockabye Your Baby, with the Dixie melody. I'm slightly conscious of the wording of that song in these days. So I suppose, I don't know whether to say trigger warning or what to say, but it's a song of its time is what I'll say. Her performance of it is incredible though.
And I believe we have Vincent Minnelli to thank for adding Rockabye Your Baby into her arrangement. It was his idea to put that into her very first concert tour at the Palladium in 1951.
Yeah, it's obviously the lyrics are not very PC now.
Yeah.
You could say the same about Swanee as well, another Wilson song that she stole. There's a story that when they were doing the sound rehearsal or run through for the recording, one of the technicians asked the drummers to tone it down a bit, and she turned around and said, no, I like it loud. The reason I love this version of Rockabye the most is because of the drum at the end section where she starts singing, A Million Baby Kisses. And you can't see her stamping a foot, but I know she is, because she always stamped a foot on that section when she sang it on television. And then again, I prefer the final note of it. I prefer it when she reaches that on the 62 TV special. But that drum section is just one of my favourite things ever.
Yeah, that last note, that one, you can feel it in your spine. It's incredible.
I mean, I just wonder, because she was so small, where it came from. I know Sid Luft said she had quite a wide rib cage, but then Joe Pasternak said she had a small rib cage. But obviously, Sid Luft knew her, not to be rude, knew her anatomy a bit more. But I honestly don't know for the size of her, where it come from.
No, I mean, when I've come across people, because I'm 5'11", I'm just 6 foot, I'm 5'11", small bit more. If I come across somebody that's 5 foot or 5'2" or something, they're so small to me already. But then she was 4'11". I'm just like, how?
She wasn't from this planet.
No.
As simple as that. She is not human. I don't know where she came from, but she is not. She is not human.
And I think I'm right. It's after Rockabye, the orchestra starts to play her bow music. So I'm envisaging in my head that she sings Rockabye at the microphone stand. Orchestra plays Over the Rainbow. She starts taking her bows. The audience are screaming. They're all going mad. And it's either between this one and the next one, or the next one and the one after that she says the very famous line, "I'll sing them all and we'll stay all night," when they call her back. Is it after the next one and before Swanee?
I think it is. I think it's yes, after Rainbow and
after Rainbow and before Swanee, yeah. Which is just, I love that line. But of course she gives in kind of to Over the Rainbow straight away after Rockabye. This is a lovely version of Over the Rainbow, and you talked about the quote with the cracks in her voice. There are a few cracks in her voice in this performance of Over the Rainbow, but it adds something unbelievable to the performance.
There usually is quite a few cracks in her voice when she performs this song from the 1950s onward. She really gets into the well, to quote Melissa Manchester, the deeper meaning of the song. She gets right into it. And, you know, she doesn't really do it in this version, but of course she does in many others. You can hear her start to cry. And you just can't help but tear up right along with her. You know, you can't help but wonder what was going through her mind as she was starting to tear up. And it just adds a whole other level of emotion to that song. And, you know, to this day, I can't listen to really any version without having my eyes fill up a little bit, even the original in the film, because I know what that, you know, how that would deeply impact her so much later on, right? Yeah.
It's a journey.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I think the song resonated more in a concert years. It wasn't sung as pure as in The Wizard of Oz. And then she always sang it different after that, because the way she sings the last line in The Wizard of Oz, Why Can't I? She sings that very mellow, but she always changed it after that to a much like higher note. It says, as somebody who's not like familiar with music, you can hear a few in the Command performance. It's still quite pure in 43, but you can start to hear a few little emotional cracks in the voice. And then there's quite a lot in the TV special, the Jubilee, because obviously she had laryngitis that night anyway. As some critic says, the tears were probably more from pain than anything else that night. But it's, yes, as Monia mentioned, in the Carnegie Hall, there's not as many cracks as in some, but there's a few, but it adds effect. It definitely has effect.
And of course, sorry.
She belts the final note in her concert years, which she did in The Wizards of Oz. I've always gathered that to be because of her getting, as Carly says, her getting deeper into the emotion of the song.
I was just going to say, and I have to mention that, you know, the solid 3 minutes of clapping and cheering at the end of Over the Rainbow, you can tell that it hit everyone in the audience just the same as it hit her. So it's amazing. And I think from here on out, after every single song that finishes out, there's at least, you know, 3, 4, I think even 5 minutes of just solid clapping and solid cheering. And yeah, it's quite remarkable, actually.
It is, yeah. I always, the very first time I heard it that way, the complete concert, I was taken aback by how long the applause goes on between those encores, you know, because I think the way, again, I'm just probably overanalyzing it a little bit, but I kind of feel the way the show was structured was that Rockabye was kind of the official last song of the act, and Over the Rainbow was the first encore. It's kind of the way I picked up on it. But of course, our second encore then is Swanee. Again, the lyrics may be a little bit on PC these days, but I hope this isn't any upsetting to anybody, but I don't think I'm ever going to not like Judy singing Swanee, because it just is.
It's such a staple in her career. And I mean, she does it in, is it 1940 that she first sings it?
I think 69, yeah.
Yeah. And it's it's quite interesting to hear the comparison between the two, from that and then from A Star Is Born. I mean, obviously the one in A Star Is Born is very similar to what we see in Carnegie. But even as a 16-year-old kid, she's, again, just belting this song. And, you know, as we talked about before, where does this come from? It's such a, I mean, the lyrics aren't exactly PC anymore, but it's such a classic.
Yeah.
It's a classic Garland song. You can't help but love it.
No. And it's iconic. Her the last two notes, I think, are just pure iconic. How she does that is beyond me.
Yeah. I think there's an outtake. I'm trying to remember if it's in Swanee. I'm pretty sure it's in Swanee when she's in recording it for A Star Is Born, and she stops in the middle of it and says, "Well, where do I breathe in this goddamn?" Oh. It's funny. I always thought that little outtake was hysterical because yeah, I mean the song is just go go go.
I think that's Melancholy Baby, the ballad one that she says that in. I think.
Doesn't Melancholy Baby go into Swanee?
Yes.
So I think it might be in the in-between because she has to go from Melancholy Baby to Swanee and she's, well, where do I breathe here?
It's Swanee that's got the laughing outtake, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Excuse me. I got overexcited there. Yes.
Am I remembering right? Have I seen a photograph of Judy wearing a top hat at Carnegie Hall performing Swanee, even didn't perform it like she did, you know, the Palace and that? So, I've just had deja vu that I asked you that.
Oh.
Yeah, and then mentioned the Palace and the Met and everything. But yes, she did. She wore a top hat. So I wonder what she was doing with that. This is why we need footage.
Yeah, and I've often wondered where she pulled that out of, because like, was it on the piano? Was it like, where was it that she just grabbed this hat, you know?
Which just was like not a part of any other part of the show, and
yeah,
it was a costume changing show. And she didn't do it in any other concerts that I'm aware of.
No.
Shows.
Unless the only thing I can think of is maybe she was taking a bit of inspiration from the Jubilee, 4-Star Jubilee, because she did have a top hat in Swanee for that. So maybe she was taking inspo from that one, maybe.
I like to think of some funny story that it was an audience members or something ended up on the stage.
I would put it faster.
I like that, actually. Give me your hat.
Well, you could believe that though, couldn't you? You wouldn't put it past that.
Yeah.
That was classic Judy.
Definitely. And we're into the final two encores then, again with more banter between the audience. Doesn't she say, oh, we've only got two things left, and someone says, do them both, and she goes, oh my.
There's it's funny the banter that happens between Swanee and After You've Gone, because so many audience members are shouting out requests and she's like, well, we can't do that, I don't have the arrangement for that, we can't do that. And then finally she's like, well, we have two. We have these two that we can do. And she says Chicago, the audience cheers, and then she says After You've Gone, and the audience goes wild.
Yeah,
so of course, you know, she has to start with that one.
It's incredible, actually, these two, After You've Gone and Chicago, these two songs, because like her song bag was so, in all these shows, she sings so many songs. I don't know how she has the energy to and the voice to still do these songs right at the end of a very full-on, very exhausting concert, but she does.
I do have to say though, After You've Gone on the recording is one of the few where I can sometimes hear a little bit out of breath. Is that just me? Have you not noticed it?
Do you know, now that you've said it, I'll probably listen to it and pick up on it more.
Maybe it's just me. Yeah, I can sort of hear it. I can't hear it at all in Chicago, which is the final song. But After You've Gone, there's another one from a Gene Kelly film, so I'll call you that one. But yeah, do you know, After You've Gone has never been one of my favourites. I love it in For Me and My Gal, but it's never been one of my favourites in a concert era.
Honestly, me too. That's kind of the one that it didn't really, I mean, again, it's great, it's Garland, but it's one that I could kind of take or leave. But yeah, I mean, like you said, it was great in For Me and My Gal. I love those close-up shots of her as she, you know, when she's slowing the song down, and you know, that's wonderful. But yeah, no, I agree with you on that one, Sarah.
I think it suits her 40, and I think she sang it earlier than that as well, didn't she, on recording? It suits her
Yes.
younger voice, I think, than her concert voice, even though she did sing it a lot in concert and obviously enjoyed singing it, and the audience liked it. But
I have to say, I've always quite enjoyed After You've Gone. Yeah, it's funny. Obviously, I enjoy anything, nearly pretty much everything she does, but
Exactly. It's hard to say, you know, one song over another. Like, they're all so wonderful.
And then we wrap up the evening with Chicago, which is what it is. It's funny. She loved city songs. She had her San Francisco. She had her Chicago. It's just a pity she didn't live to see New York from Liza.
Chicago is one of my absolute favourites.
Yeah.
The whole version. I love the version on episode 22, is it?
24.
24, that's it, the one where she has Victim on. I love that.
Yeah.
Episode. I love a vocal's good on that, but it's not as strong as Carnegie Hall. But I love watching her facial expressions on that.
Yeah.
So I try to imagine her doing them at Carnegie Hall. Me and my mum, when I first heard this version of it before I had the Carnegie Hall LP, I had it on a tape recording of, you know, just random Judy live recordings, but it was the Carnegie Hall version. And me and my mum like sat there trying to work out what she was singing, you know, without actually knowing the lyrics. And I just couldn't work out what they were. It's such a crazy song. And some of the lyrics I was coming up with, you know, wrong lyrics, which sometimes we do discuss mishearing lyrics, you know, websites. But no, that's an amusing anecdote. But for me, what I love, again, I don't know where she got the energy to finish on this song, on those notes, and I said, I can't sing, so I can't demonstrate, but the way she actually sings, you know, the word Chicago, and then they're like, Chicago.
Yeah.
She was really good with phrasing, which I think we will discuss at some point. But yeah, there you go.
I have to say I'm the same. I think it was one time myself and my dad were listening to Chicago, and he was, you know, she sings the lyric of the town that Billy Sunday could not shut down. He was like, "Who or what is Billy Sunday?" I have no idea.
I think it means it's to do with prohibition, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Is it, you know, Billy Sunday? You know, Sunday's quite a religious day. You know, those type. Chicago was at the forefront of inhibition, prohibition. Sorry, edit that out, please. And you know, I just feel like that's what it meant. You know, they can't stop this wildness of the town.
So Judy at Carnegie Hall, the album itself was released in July of 1961. It did hit number one. It stayed at number one on the US charts for 13 weeks. It did sell over 1 million copies, which means Judy got a gold album for it. Ultimately, it went on to win 5 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year. And she was the first female artist ever to win Album of the Year at the Grammys. I suppose one of the limitations of the original LP is that the concert had to be trimmed a bit to fit the 2 LP set. So we didn't, general public, we didn't get to hear the chat that we've talked about in between songs and her audience interaction. Nearly all of that was trimmed except for Carly's 1 2 1 2 3 oh it works on Who Cares, which is such a shame, but it was a limitation of the album, the running time of an album at the time. It was ultimately DCC Gold released the complete concert. I think it was about 2000. They released that one, which was the first time the complete concert, as was tape recorded that night, was heard. And Capitol Records then released their 40th anniversary CD the following year in 2001. And that's the version we most often hear today, which also includes all the chatter and everything in between it. Given that the album was such a hit at the time, I mean, she knocked Elvis Presley off the charts with this album. Given that it was such a hit, Capitol Records decided to do a follow-up live album, this time of new material to her, called Judy Takes Broadway. And the idea of this was that it was a live concert arranged by Capitol Records for them to record, and it was going to be all current or fairly current Broadway material that she was going to sing for the first time. I think it was at Manhattan Center it was recorded. Marilyn Monroe was in the audience, I believe. Barbra Streisand was in the audience. The great unfortunate thing is she had an awful case of laryngitis that night. The album was never released, but in 1989, some of it was on a CD called Judy Live, which is the aborted Judy Takes Broadway album. Despite the laryngitis, my God, it's a hell of a performance.
Yeah, I found it's crazy that they didn't release it because she had laryngitis, because you can tell, obviously you can tell she's got a few vocal problems, but I love Some People, and
yeah.
I absolutely love Never Will I Marry, which before I met you used to say was my theme song. But no, yeah, it's crazy.
It's brilliant, and I'd love to hear. It's funny because pre-COVID times I used to have a 45-minute drive from my house up to work, and the released Judy Takes Broadway album, it's not that long, and I had listened to it from start to finish, or almost start to finish, on that drive, and it's such an enjoyable listen, I think, despite the vocal problems. Like, it's, as you said, I actually love Get Me to the Church on Time from My Fair Lady, because she if you listen to it, even if you're not familiar with music or whatever, you can hear she's modulating up and up and up and up in the key until she's really up there despite everything. It's, I don't know, it just is a marvel.
Well, Mort Lindsay said she used to modulate all over the place. Like Just in Time, he mentions, was one which is one of my favourite songs of hers. So she doesn't modulate in normal places that singers do. All over the place.
And we might have to snip this little bit out as well, but again, we talked about some of the books, and what's her name? Stevie Phillips?
Something like that.
So that one, you know who I'm on about. I've read the book. I'm not even going to go into half of it, but you mentioned about Just in Time. Again, one of the few things she says in that book is apparently this Stevie person knew a little bit about music or something like that anyway, and she tried to learn Judy's arrangement of Just in Time, but she acknowledges in the book how difficult an arrangement Judy's of Just in Time actually was, and that's about the only good thing in that book.
I will be staying away from that one for sure.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's just no. Just no. The legacy of Carnegie Hall, I suppose, is that it's going to go on as a lasting testament to Judy Garland, the live artist. The album is her most successful album ever. And there have been some, I suppose, recreations of the concert or glimpses of the concert as over the years. We mentioned it earlier, the 1962 special that she did with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. Well, the end of that show closes with Judy in concert, and she's wearing her Carnegie Hall Act II outfit. And it's the closest glimpse we can get to what she might have been like at Carnegie Hall. And all the songs she sings to close out that show are from Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, and you can see even just there in a TV studio the reaction, electricity, the reaction, the end of it, you know, how she worked the audience, the way they're all clamouring at the end of the stage at the end. Just such a
exactly as it was at the end of Carnegie Hall from the photos that we can see of everybody reaching out to touch her. It's the same in the TV studio.
But we were going to talk about the recreation in Me and My Shadows, weren't we?
We were, absolutely.
This, which is a really, really good biopic. There's a few things they couldn't do in there, especially surrounding Sid Luft, because he was still alive at the time, so it's not completely accurate, but it's probably the best filmed depiction of life. Obviously Judy Davis was like known to like embody Judy when she performs, and you can see that on the Carnegie Hall section. She's mimicked all the, she does Swanee in San Francisco, she's mimicked all her gestures, but the one thing is that she's actually mimicking the version of San Francisco from the TV special, because San Francisco comes in the first act of Carnegie Hall when she's dressed in a dress and a little over jacket. So I always find that bit quite amusing. And Swanee is mimicked as well from the TV show. Obviously that's all she had to go on because we've got no footage, but it does always amuse me that San Francisco is depicted as being there at the second act, at the end of the show in that film.
I was wondering if that's what you were going to say about that, because it's the one thing that torments the life out of me, that it shows her in the Act 2 outfit singing San Francisco, followed by straight into Swanee, and I'm like, whoa, totally different acts.
I know why they did it. They did it because they were like the best examples to go from for a young study and watch. But I was thinking, I mean, she could have watched some of her other TV series and, you know, embodied the actions from them for, you know, for singing a different song at the end, or they could have depicted Act 1, San Francisco.
Because it's not like, I mean, they had the outfit, like, oh, sorry, did I come across you?
No.
Oh, because they had the outfit, like it shows her coming on stage, for Judy Davis coming on stage in the black dress and the blue jacket. So they had the outfit.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I will say one thing though, that part of the film does give me chills though.
Yeah.
You know, when the orchestra comes on and she's walking towards the wings. I do love that. And
to be fair, some of the far away audience shots of Judy Davis, there are times when she is very spookily like the real Judy. I could be misremembering something, but I believe years and years and years ago on Lorna's website, she talked about that Carnegie Hall recreation. And for anyone that doesn't know, co-produced or was involved in the production of Me and My Shadows, the TV show. But she talked about that Carnegie Hall recreation and how when they had it done, I don't know, did they show the completed piece, or was it a piece that was done in black and white? I think at one stage, again, I could be misremembering something, but I think at one stage there was a thought of having some bits of that in black and white or something. But either way, some piece of footage of Judy Davis at Carnegie Hall portraying Judy Garland was shown to Liza. And Lorna says that Liza turned around to her and said, "It's great that you used footage of Mama at Carnegie Hall in this."
Yeah, because I never thought she resembled her as much as Tammy Blanchard did. That clip on the Wizard of Oz set is always like amazes me in the miniseries. But she did in the later 60s periods from the TV show onwards. I thought she like resembled her a lot, but no, I think because as you said, there's like distant shots, it does look a bit like her.
Yeah. From distance. Sorry, Carly, we've just kind of been back and forth here.
No, you guys go ahead. I mean, I've only seen the Me and My Shadows mini-series, I think twice, and it's been quite a long time, so I don't recall a lot of the details. So, I mean, you guys, you both are doing a brilliant job with that. But I do agree, though, that like the one thing that did stand out to me about that miniseries was how Judy Davis embodied Judy Garland in the 60s portion of that film. A little bit kind of in the 50s, but nowhere near as much as the 60s. But I mean, they were the same age at that point, so I guess it kind of worked a bit better.
I was just going to say, I think that was one of the difficulties, that Judy Davis was a little bit too old for the 50s and 40s and 50s Judy.
Meet me in St. Louis saying Judy, it was just ridiculous, but and that week.
How did it grow from Tammy Blanchard supposedly less than a year in the timeline to, you know, a woman in her 40s?
Yeah.
They portrayed that as, if you notice, they portrayed Girl Crazy shooting as more like 1940 time, even though in reality it was 43, because it goes through breakdown and then mentions how she married David Rose. And I know they did that because they wanted Tammy Blanchard to portray as young child, and then they wanted to bring Judy Davis in as an adult, showing her as becoming an adult when she met Vincent Minnelli, basically. But I think Tammy Blanchard could have handled the Meet Me in St. Louis sections.
I think they should have left Tammy Blanchard all the way through until, you know, her departure from MGM. Like, I think that would have been perfect, because really her life was broken down into two pieces. MGM, not MGM, right? So I mean, that would have been, I think that would have made the film have a bit more of an impact, I think.
I think so, and I could see it working where, like, the Tammy Blanchard does it right up to leaving MGM, and then the very next, as it is in the film, the next shot is Judy Davis with Kay Thompson in New York when they meet Sid. Like, that's just perfect for Judy Davis to come in at that point.
Exactly, it's the perfect split down the middle between MGM and concert years.
Yeah, but I don't know.
What do we know?
What do we know? I'm sure there's a reason somewhere for it. Well, I think we better wrap up our marathon session here, or we'll be having it. There'll be a hell of a job editing this. I hope everybody enjoyed. This will be the ultimate, the first episode, the first proper episode.
Yes, this was that was a lot of fun. I absolutely loved, you know, dissecting this incredible concert that, you know, obviously is going to resonate with every single Garland fan there is out there. I couldn't have thought of a better way to get our podcast started. So,
woohoo! I had a great time as well. So, you know, thank you to everyone.
Yeah, thank you. I echo what you both say. What you both said. Thank you.
And we'll see everybody next time.
Thanks for joining us.